I've done a little bit more research into the Florida history about tornadoes and stuff, and it was sounding really, really bad because I haven't been following twisters or tornadoes or hurricanes in a very long time, so I don't know what's hit them or not. And when I was trying to work out like which one's the worst one or how bad this is compared to the others, I remember just seeing lots of different names and just being like, oh my gosh, how many hurricanes have hit, and feeling like this is a complete disaster and it's terrible. But I have done a bit more research, and according to the Wikipedia list, it doesn't actually look like such a common thing. Okay, there was a lot of flooding last year, and then they had Hurricane Ian the year before that, which a lot of people are saying that the flooding this year turned out to be exactly the same as Ian, or a similar kind of level to Ian, and a similar amount of destruction. I think this one could have been a lot worse, but it wasn't, because it didn't hit it hit below the so there was a lot less flooding and the surge was coming out rather than in. So I think that helped things. But yeah, I've come up with another idea of how to save houses, like with the body bag for a car. So you can have body bags for a car where if you know that flooding is likely to happen, and you can't get your car out, having a bag that you can drive your car into it and then seal it up. And then I guess you have to leave it in that position and wait until the water rises, and then you can kind of like float it to an anchor, or you can make it so that it drives into a bag, but there's also some sort of anchor that you can point it onto. I watched a video yesterday where they actually had someone who was by the coast and hitting on the hardest part, and his house was actually okay, and that kind of gave me a bit of hope, thinking his house was massive, and I don't know how he could afford such a big house because he looked very young. His partner as well, they both looked very young, and I was just thinking, how could they afford such a big place? But yeah, they had a way of lifting up the boat, because they had a small boat, and they tied it to this thing, and it did actually survive, and there was minimal damage, and that kind of made me think that maybe the damage wasn't so bad, or it was, but I'm looking at how many houses have been destroyed, and okay, there have been some good quality houses destroyed, but I feel like the media would be more tempted to focus on those houses, because if you see a strong house falling apart, it makes you feel like this could be everywhere. But I think the majority of houses, not all of them, but majority of them of that fell were probably old ones, and a lot of people have been saying that they've been living in this place for 30 years and they haven't had anything like this, or any Ian, some of them saying that Ian wasn't as bad, and Ian didn't create a flood in this area. And so I just I feel like it's just hitting different areas, and I heard also about Andrew, but Andrew was like 92, so that was like 30 years ago. And I feel like if a disaster happens, you can talk about it and it sounds terrible, like it's happening all the time. But yeah, if there's like 30-year gaps between the big hurricanes, then it's not as bad as what it seemed like. It seemed like it was happening every year, and it probably is happening every year, but usually on a smaller scale. I think the problem is, though, if the reason why it was so bad this year is because the water temperature was 2 degrees higher, I feel like it's actually just an insight of what you should expect every year. Why? Because hurricanes do form every year, and I suppose it's more about where they hit and how much they come inland. But if they're big because of the temperature of the water, this is not something that's going to change. I mean, it might be 2 degrees higher this year, but it might be 3 degrees or 4 degrees higher next year, and there's no guarantee that this won't happen again, and it probably will. I heard somewhere where they're saying if you if you want to build a new house, you're not allowed to have any living space on the bottom. I don't think you need to be that strong technically. I feel like if you wanted to have a living space on the bottom, it should be fine. But I think that the main point of having the two stories is that if you want to lift all the furniture upwards, it might be hard to lift the sofa up, but if you have furniture downstairs and you have a second floor, then it gives you that, that chance. If you've got 24 hours to prepare, it gives you enough time to take the furniture upstairs. One thing you could also have is have like walls that are like cement, so that like how a swimming pool is made. You wouldn't put plasterboard if you're making a swimming pool, but have the walls and the ground floor far more solid, either brick or just like a thin. But yeah, I noticed a lot of the houses that fell apart, they did kind of look cheaply made. And if they're 20, 30 years old, then in a way it might actually be a good thing to have them fall, because it will give them a chance to, restart and make them with a better material. So there was a lot of houses that have survived, and I didn't see that yesterday, but there was a lot of houses that did survive. They look good, they look strong, and there was minimal damage. One thing you could have is a blanket that goes over the house. Like if you get like clips on the roofing, and if you know that a hurricane's about to come, find a way of just clipping the sort of blanket over the top of the roofing, so that way the roof tiles don't start flying around. That could be an idea. Just if you know you're going to end up spending like 2-3 hours like putting all the tiles back on, maybe having some sort of edging roof blanket to go over the roof might be an idea. And you might even go a step further and turn it into a type of tent where you have string that's kind of pull the corners. That will help prevent the roof from flying off. A lot of them did actually lose roofs that fly off. And even the caravans, if you have a small caravan and you think that the roof is going to fly off, a caravan blanket might help with that. It won't help with the water, but a caravan blanket might help stop your house from, just having that extra bit of strength. Like a tent is made, how you'd have a tent. You have the tent in the middle, and then you have the string that kind of pulls it away and holds it to the ground so that it doesn't fly away. You can have like a sort of caravan blanket, so that's an idea of something you can do. I know in Orlando they were getting rope and tying all the things, the signposts, or tying all the signposts that flap around. But you can do a similar thing with a house. If it's a small house particularly, it would be quite easy. I wouldn't recommend building any more bungalows in areas that are lower than 10 feet or something. If they've got a 10 feet from sea level, I would say probably a 10 feet drop is, because I feel like the chance of there being a 9 feet surge, or a 9 feet surge plus rainfall. So if it's like 3 foot surge and then a 6 foot rainfall or something like that, I think you should prepare for 9 foot. So if anything is 9 foot under above sea level, you should probably do something where you could have to build 2 levels. But yeah, I don't think you should only, because some of the buildings where they have only, and then you just have like some horrible planks underneath, it doesn't look quite nice. So yeah, I think you should be able to use the space underneath, but just prepare that once a year you might have to lift it up for a couple of weeks. But I don't know. I think there are lots of ways to get around this issue of flooding. There is ways of, or I don't know if you could sell like extra thin plasterboard, in the sort of knowledge that it's probably going to be destroyed in three years or something. Usually plasterboard in England, it is quite thick, but then again, you do know that it's going to last for a long time, whereas in these places it might not. But yeah, a lot of the damage was probably buildings that were old and probably do need to rebuild. I think it's bad to lose your whole house, but the good thing about losing your whole house is it means that you actually have like a fresh canvas. If you were to if you have a bungalow and it gets flooded by 9 feet, you really need to like remove the whole house and build again, but with a better, stronger structure, perhaps more brickwork. Brickwork can't guarantee, it's surviving in a twister. But yeah, I'm just thinking about myself, like if I were living there, what would I do? Another thing actually is I've always told that if a hurricane is on the way, it's a good idea to hide in the bathtub because you've got like the four walls around you. But another thing you could sell actually like hurricane boxes. So a box that perhaps has some food in it, perhaps has like a button that you can press to call like some sort of alarm, have some sort of alarm, emergency alarm. And then perhaps even if it's in a flooded area, you could even have boxes that have like, when you press a button and like the boat pops up or something in an airplane, have boxes that are either just for the dry land or ones that are designed for flooding. But the idea is that if your house falls down and the roof falls on top of you, the box will actually keep you safe from anything that might fall on top of you. And you could have it either outside as like a storage box, and then if a hurricane comes, you bring it into the house on the sort of belief that if your house does start falling apart, at least you've got somewhere where your body can fit in, and it has sort of a hidden supply of oxygen in case you get locked in there and find you can't open it because the house is on top of you. I don't know. I'm sure there's money to be made on this. But yeah, I definitely like the idea of pop-up. You can have small houses or big ones, pop-up rooms that you can place in the driveway of these houses to help them build it up. But I think most of them seem fairly okay. But yeah, there are some towns where like half of it is just all gone, and then the other half is actually all fine, and I think they must have just gotten very unlucky with like a big gust of wind. But I think it's not as bad as what I thought yesterday. I think it is bad, and it is very bad, and it's bad that it's happened 3 years in a row, and because it's happened 3 years in a row, it's likely to happen again. But looking at the history, there was like a 10-year or 30-year gap between the other ones. And a lot of people have said they've lived there for a very long time and have not experienced anything like this. So it's not that common. But unfortunately, I do think I would probably not invest too much because of things like this. But yeah, houses are not designed to last forever. And if you've got a house that's been standing for 20, 30 years, maybe it would be better if the house was destroyed. That way, it should be easy to take it down and not feel like you need to save it. If it's a bungalow and it should be a two-story, you would have to spend money to get rid of that bungalow. And if you don't really have much money, you're not going to want to. But if the house has been completely destroyed, then you have to get rid of it because it's not there any longer and it's already gone. So maybe in a way people who have lost everything might actually be in a slightly better position, because at least it means they don't have to knock anything down. So if you look at it from that perspective, it might be okay. And if these people have been living there for 20 years, they've probably paid off their mortgage a long time ago and they've probably got savings. I think it would be worse for people who have a big house that's completely destroyed and they have a huge mortgage on the house that no longer exists. I think those would be the people that are in the worst problems, and therefore I think definitely for the next 3 years, I don't think people should be allowed to take out big mortgages on houses like this, because no one's going to want to buy a house if it's and have a mortgage. No one's going to want to lend people lots of money if the house is not going to be there in a few years' time.